We're going to talk about African Americans after the Civil War. Okay, so let's take a look at a few terms. Let me know if you are familiar with the term in history or if you think you know what it means. Let's look at the first word, union. What does union mean to you?
Um, it's like a united organization.
Okay, that sounds pretty good. Next, we have confederacy. If union is the united uh, organization, what would a confederacy be to you?
Um, I'm in the United. I'm in the United Nations or something.
Like a United Nations, okay. How about abolitionists?
I don't know what that is.
Okay, what do you think it means?
I don't know the root word.
Okay, what do you think ab means in a word when you see uh like abnormal, abolitionist? What do you think ab means? For example, you know normal and abnormal, right?
Like against something.
So if I say this is a normal girl, what does that mean to you?
Uh, the girl is normal looking.
What does normal mean?
Um, being having the features of an ordinary person.
Okay, so normal is like ordinary, right? So abnormal would mean what? If Steve isn't
Something not normal, not having the normal features of.
right, so Steve would not be ordinary, or he would not be normal, so he's abnormal. So abolitionists is do you think this means something about giving something or taking it away?
Taking it away.
Have you ever heard of the word abolish before? I want to abolish you. What does that mean? What do you think it means?
Want, wanting to um
You want to abolish a student from the classroom. What does that mean?
make him leave the classroom.
Okay, almost just the same. You're almost there. So, just by looking at the word, if you look at it very carefully, you say the root word, but I think it's more about the prefix of the word that's going to help you understand it, okay? If you're having troubles with that in the future. And Emancipation Proclamation. Are you familiar with either of these words here in this phrase?
No.
Okay. It is actually the title of a speech. This one was years long before Martin Luther King's biggest speech, right? If I look at the word like emancipation, like if I say this is my emancipation from my work, what do you think emancipation sounds like it means? Just take a guess.
Um,
You're feeling emancipated. Is this like a good thing or a bad thing?
probably bad.
Okay. And proclamation, the word comes from the word proclaim. Okay, so it's like you're saying something. You're talking about an emancipation, and we'll get into that soon. 13th Amendment. What do you think the 13th Amendment, not exactly what it is, but what could this basically be?
Amendment.
Just what do you think an amendment is?
The joining of a union, maybe.
Right? Amendment means to join something together, for sure. Good job. Freedmen. It gets easier. What do you think it means?
Um, like someone they can act at their own will.
Okay, great. Sharecropping.
Um, I'm not sure about this one.
Okay, you might not be sure, but what does it look like? Sharecropping is a compound word. It's two words in one. We can just separate them maybe. And you tell me, what do you think it could relate to? Like, do you think it relates to something about China? Do you think it relates to something about um, commerce, economy? What do you think it relates to?
I don't know. Maybe like a system of cropping
Cropping relates to what subject?
related to agriculture.
Which culture?
Agriculture.
Agriculture. Okay, yes, you're definitely close. And then black codes. Look, notice the capital C there. What do you think black codes are?
Black codes.
Black codes. What do you think black codes are?
I don't know. Like um, a certain coded language maybe that is used between a certain group of people.
Okay, sounds good. Now, let's go into our first question before we get into the lecture. What changes first do you think happened when slavery ended in the United States? As you know, the United States had hundreds of years of slavery. What do you think big change happened first when slavery ended? For anyone, just it could be just a short answer.
Um, there were a lot of free labor. Not free labor. Like there were a lot of unemployed. There were more unemployed people
Oh,
in society.
okay, sounds great. Who do you think were the unemployed people?
Um, the former slaves who were
Uh,
now looking for jobs, maybe.
all right. And what problems do you think still remains today because of a result of slavery ending?
Of slavery or of it ending.
The ending of slavery. What problems do you think still exist now because of that?
Racism, maybe.
All right. And can you be more specific about the racism? Like who's causing the racism towards which group of people?
Um, there's could still be people uh who 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 were like racist against the black people because they were overconfident about their own history
Who is
and
overconfident?
The white, maybe some of them, those who
Okay.
don't really understand the history.
All right. And why do you think, and why might freedom and equality be two different things? Like, what's the difference between freedom and equality?
Freedom is like you can you can do things as you will,
Hmm.
but equality means that you are treated fairly, and it's it's different because someone free might not be treated with equality. Yeah.
Can you give me an example?
Um,
Like maybe in Chinese culture or something like that?
in Chinese culture, I mean, in like Chinese, um, in present Chinese society, I think the in Shanghai it's better, but in like many other um poor poor provinces,
Hmm.
um, many women can like suffer when they try to find jobs, especially when they reach the age over like 30 years old, because some companies assume that they have to get married and give birth to a child, so they were unwilling to invest time and like resources into women because they think that they'll eventually quit the job anyways.
I
So
see. Yes.
yeah, during job interviews, that could be like a minus, and they might not be able to be treated with equality.
Excellent answer. Okay, so how far did life improve for African Americans after 1865? Of course, you might not know this particular answer, but after reading the excerpt that I have today, the passage, you might get a chance to understand. Now, the position of African Americans in 1865. From 1861 in the USA, there was a civil war fought between the North, also called the Union, and the South, called the Confederacy. More specifically, if you like to take notes, the Union is the northern group of the United States that believed that, at least mostly believed, that African Americans or blacks were free to engage in in regular work. They deserved their pay, and that they should not be enslaved. Generally, that was the case, and most Union states had abolished slavery. Abolished means to get rid of slavery. Okay, the Confederate States were the southern states mostly. They also, I guess you can say, for example, West Virginia, which still has the culture today of, some forms of racism is still alive there, at least some questionable thoughts and actions. Texas was one of the actual last state to have slavery, and they had slavery for longer periods than the Emancipation, which ended the slavery. They had been a part of the Confederacy with West Virginia and many other states. Um, and at one time, they fought in this big war to gain control over sedition, which the Confederate States they had split from the United States basically and created their own country. Confederacy was known as the Reds, and the Unions were known as the Blue. So the abolitionists fought hard to end slavery. Abolitionists, as we saw before, that means a person who sides against slavery, so they want to end slavery. The Emancipation Proclamation of 1863, it ended slavery through the speech provided by Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, but only in areas under Union control. And then the 13th Amendment wrote into the Emancipation the Constitution, which we call the Bill of Rights, at least for the first 10 uh, bills of constitution, the first 10 amendments. And in 1865, it made 4 million African American slaves. It turned them all into freedmen or freedmen. Though they became free, they were far from equal. They can only move from plantations and farms of their former owners, but they didn't have enough resources and still faced some hostility from many white people no matter where they went. If they wanted to get a regular job, they certainly was not going to be provided the job when a white person was trying to get the job. Okay, so just like you had predicted, yes, there's going to be some, racism being encountered, right? Some bigotry, which means, a person who does not agree with another person because of, you know a particular skin color, race. It doesn't have to be racist when it's bigoted, but it can be racist when it's targeted to only one group of people, and I mean that hatred. And then there was an unprecedented problem of how African Americans should deal with sudden freedom, particularly how they would make their living. Initially, the problem was addressed by the practice of what we call sharecropping. This is where landlords allowed their former slaves to work the land for a share of the produce. So, in other words, if you didn't have a place to go, you could still work on the farm because, of course, we don't want to work on the farm. We have the money, but we need to keep the money going for the farm. Now, if you're looking for a place to stay and you need food, you can grow the food and keep what you grow and live in the shacks that you build in our property. Of course, we will charge you a small tax, and if that's regarding money, or food, at least we'll take the fresh produce. You can keep what's left over and you can sell what you need, again provided that you pay a land tax. So that's what sharecropping usually did. It still kept former slaves under control because they didn't know anything different than serving the masters. Now, though they were free to move away, free from the punishment, free to break up from the families, um, the former slaves had little choice but to work the long hours. They didn't receive many rewards for their work, and they even still earned a very small living. If not, they did not earn much money at all. They continued to face discrimination and acts of violence, especially from the southern whites. Any questions?
No.
Now, up until the Reconstruction era, this is when the assassination of President Abraham Lincoln had taken place in 1865, and Andrew Johnson took over. Now, Andrew Johnson was a very controversial figure. You probably heard of Donald Trump,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And not to be sure and make the connections between the two presidents, but Andrew Johnson was pretty much seen in that same light. Very controversial. He was a great president for, creating the first federal police force, basically. But who did he go after? Mostly native people who lived the land, Native Americans, basically, and of course, blacks. Now, Johnson was unsympathetic to the cause of improving the conditions of African Americans. However, Congress dominated the House by Republicans who wanted to carry out reforms to the South to help them. So this means that Johnson was more on what you may call the Democrat side, and you can say that Congress was taken over by the opposites, which were the Republicans, right? They wanted to help create reforms in the South. That means they wanted to make new rules and make things better. Now, Congress was angry at that, and once they had readmitted to the Union, the South, Southern states passed the highly discriminatory and racist black codes, restricting the rights of freedmen and allowing a tax upon them. Congress led the way in reforms and set a precedent. That means they set something like an example so that others will follow for later reforms. And what this did was it set up a Freedmen's Bureau, which promoted welfare and education. Now, a bureau is basically just like a group that works particularly in a specific area of or focus of issues or maybe other matters. Like we have the Intelligence Bureau, the federal FBI Bureau of Investigations, right? It's like just a group that focuses on federal investigations. The 14th and 15th Amendments to the Constitution, which outlaw discrimination. So you cannot be a certain way towards a certain person. If you violate this act, especially on a national level, on an official or professional level, it will come back to you. That you can be sued in courts, you can be tried. This was the Union's way of controlling the South. Therefore, all states had to be or fight for fairness. A Civil Rights Act in 1866 giving legal equality. So there was a Civil Rights, 14th and 15th Amendment plus the 13th Amendment. They came together to create what we call the Civil Rights Act. So all these helped not just blacks but other minority groups in the United States by giving them a voice, allowing them to live in certain places, to have certain jobs, and most importantly, to be able to vote. And then we had the first Reconstruction Act, which guaranteed the right to vote and created new Southern Constitution. So, of course, the Reconstruction Act, and what I mean is not a very great thing. If you want my opinion, and if you want to know based on historical opinion, at least Reconstruction Act is not what it actually sounds like it means. It means to sort of rebuild the America that is known by the Southern whites to be the purest and best America for them, not so much for everyone. The period known as congressional Reconstruction led to radical changes than during any other period in the 1960s. So African Americans gained more political rights. They had more representation. I mean, it was easier for them now to run for office. Though it was very, very rare for them to run and win in this case. They can enter the state's legislature, which means they can be a part of the Congress or Senate, and they really tried in substantial numbers to represent themselves. There were also some African American members of Congress eventually over time. Like I said, it wasn't that many, but there were to be some. And federal authority was used to enforce the new law so that that could happen. The Freedmen's Bureau provided for education and welfare for African Americans, and then gradually it turned into businesses and small holdings. So we became more official in time. By we, of course, you can see clearly that I am African American person, though I would also say more that I am a Black American. But this is what our past, our history, mostly meant. Now, the word federal in this case means of all of the nation, not just a particular place. So, if the federal rule states that Texas must do this, that means Arizona, Arkansas, California, even all the way down to Wyoming, they must do the same thing as well. Now, the reaction of white Southerners increasingly grew hostile and even more extreme. They even created secret organizations. Some of the most notorious were the Ku Klux Klan. Local organization groups, they terrorized African Americans by lynching them. You may know lynching as hanging them by the neck on a tree, which would ultimately kill them, murdering them in order to prevent exercising their rights. And in 1868, there were more than 2,000 deaths and injuries in Louisiana alone. So you can only imagine if there's about almost 50 states, not yet counting Hawaii and Alaska, but if there's about 50 states like this, that means 2,000 or even 1,000 times 45 or even 40. So we're looking at somewhere between um, maybe even 8,000 deaths at most happening per year. But yes, this was just in Louisiana alone in that year. And the United States government had to deploy troops, basically army soldiers, to suppress the disorders. Of course, over time, Andrew Jackson was probably no longer president. At some point, got replaced by a Republican, and then they tried to prove that they could create order by sending out these soldiers. It was a precedent that had been set, again, a rule or a sort of followed rule. Uh, that had been set, but it continued well into the 20th century. So, 20th century meaning the 1900s, which in that century, some of your some people that you know were born around that time. Myself, my grandmother, my mother, your grandmother, they were all born around this time. So during the time when they were younger, uh, there were protections having to be made to make sure that not just black people were safe, but even Chinese, Korean, Japanese Americans, any minority group would be protected even over time, and that's still happening somewhat today. Now, white violence became an acceptable part of Southern life. In Reconstruction, there's no acceptance of African Americans as equal citizens. You've probably seen like the signs, don't eat here type signs. There were little economic equality between whites and African Americans. There were considerable violence employed to discourage or punish these contracts of romanticism or social connections, as you can see here, liaisons, any kind of relationships that you can have between a black and a white person. This was totally out of bounds. It was, in some cases, in some states, deemed illegal and could eventually get you not just arrested or imprisoned, but even killed as well. And though the civil rights had established in theory the practice of enforcement, protecting the blacks' rights, and it depended on a strong military presence, you know, to overcome this. Um, it still came without a doubt that federal authorities had to enforce the law to make sure that when passed, the blacks had protections. So by the 1870s, especially after the Hayes-Tilden Compromise of the 1877 year, African American rights were being eroded by intimidation and undermined by poor economic conditions. The situation reverted that in the pre-Civil War period where the South was allowed to regulate its own affairs. So, like I said before, the South, the states had some measure of power that they could take. They could stop certain people from voting by creating a poll tax, scaring blacks from, getting together, from collecting, congregating, meeting in churches, standing up for other black people who, were not in trouble but may have been framed for some kind of crime. They would intimidate even whites. They would hang whites. They had special names like carpetbaggers and things like that that they would call white people who try to help blacks move into a house or even provide them a job. No one was safe if black people were afforded any liberties. Now, a free question for you, and you can just say this in a sentence. Why does the text say if African Americans were far from equal, even after being freedmen? Why do you think so?
They were treated unequally in society.
Right, and then can you give me an example? In what way?
Um, in job choices,
Okay, only in job choices?
also like in like receiving like social services and things.
Okay, great. Next question. How did sharecropping help freedmen and how did it limit them? How did it like kind of not just help them, but how did it hurt them as well?
Um, it helped them because they were able to um earn money, and they didn't need to like learn another technique to, yeah, to survive. They could still work on the farm. But it also limited them from like um completely. escaping the control of the used to like the former like slave owners.
Very good. All right. And why was Reconstruction important according to the passage? Even though it was destructive towards a certain group of people, how was it also important? Reconstruction. How was it important to American society at the time?
Um, it it allowed new laboring energy to form it like to rush into society. It was also probably good to the economy because there were more people who could freely consume and yeah.
So, who benefited from Reconstruction basically? In your opinion, who won the most from it? Was it like the Southern whites, the blacks, the governments, state governments, federal governments? Who won this battle?
The government,
Which one, the federal or the state? Again, the federal
uh,
would be like the United States. The state governments would be like the smaller states.
the federal government,
Why so?
they were they were able to the the economy was probably going to be better because of the like the new consumers who were able to purchase stuff
Who are the
from them.
consumers?
The former slaves, the black people, who are now like making their own money and buying and selling freely. But like for the states, they would probably still have a lot of like um, racism issues and things like that. They would have to fix it. But the federal government, like they could have better economy, and yeah, they could leave the um the disagreement between like the black and the white and the um yeah and the racism problems for the state government to deal with.
Excellent answer. I liked especially how you first started the answer. It was everything I wanted to hear, right? And then you got into good details. I think by if you were able to write this kind of question down, right, I think that you would very, very well show that, oh, you're good at learning history. I think you did very well with that answer, okay? And then in the future, of course, we could have a sample essay question after every class. The essay, of course, not the same, maybe an extended paragraph in your sort of writing language, so not that long of a thing. But of course, the question would be in the prompt: the Reconstruction era was the most important history of African American civil rights. How far can one agree? Now, again, this statement is just being made, and then you transform it into an agreeable statement. You look at all the things that you can agree with under this prompt. Okay, that would happen in the future. But Elaine, thank you for having class with me for this. Are there any questions from your side?
No.
All right. How do you feel about learning about that for the? I think you learned that for the first time. A lot of those terms you didn't know, but
Yeah.
your last answer, your answers were excellent. I think you're a natural when it comes to history. What do you think?
It wasn't as hard as I thought.
This is basically called A levels history, by the way. So if you're, I think if anyone like yourself is interested and you're also interested, I would invite you to continue taking, this route of learning about the world. This is just a small little bit of it, but this is a one of the major sides of American history for A levels. But I would say there's more to go. There's more to learn, and I will welcome you to that. Thank you for your time.